Hi everyone. So today we're talking about ESTJs and what the most common Enneagram pairings are for this type. We're basically going to look at the correlations or the frequencies of ESTJ and certain Enneagram combinations and talk about what are the aspects that we can look at in order to tell these types apart. So all about that in the next few minutes. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Before I dive in, I want to remind you guys that I also offer coaching sessions that are aimed at helping you boost your process of self-awareness and self-understanding through a variety of methods. MBTI, Enneagram, life coaching aspects, career coaching aspects, and several other methods are used in this process. So if you're looking to develop yourself through this perspective, you can book me. You can get a free discovery call. The link is in the description below. If you have any other questions, feel free to write a comment here or message me on Facebook, on Instagram, and I'm very happy to talk to you about it. Okay, so let's dig into our video and let's discuss about ESTJs and certain Enneagram combinations. The most common Enneagram pairings for the ESTJ are 1, 3, and 8. And maybe I would also add 6. So we will talk about 1 and 8 at the beginning and then look at 3 and 6 as well. ESTJ Enneagram 1 is a pairing that I would say highlights a more reserved form of ESTJ. So they will not necessarily be your most common social extrovert. They will still be cognitively extroverted with a preference for extroverted thinking as a hero function, as a dominant function. But in their behavior, they will look kind of different. They will be more detail focused than, for example, an ESTJ 3 or an ESTJ 8. They will engage more with their introverted sensing function and engage with details, engage with aspects that enable them to constantly improve their work, constantly improve the way that they do things, and at the same time, constantly improve the way that other people do things. I find that ESTJ Enneagram 1s tend to have this heightened sense of, let's say, criticism, a heightened sense of wanting to see perfection in whatever they do and also in what other people do. A lot of them might mistype as ISTJs because they are more socially introverted and they seem to be more in touch with their introverted sensing as compared at least to some other ESTJs. They will also be the kind of people that will care quite a lot about making sure that things are being done thoroughly and properly. You have TE there, you have SI there, and you also have the Enneagram 1 energy. And when these three things come together, they kind of highlight an individual that will constantly look for ways to be intentional, purposeful, and very methodical in what they do. ESTJ is a control type if we look at it from an interaction style perspective. However, when paired with this Enneagram 1 tendencies, this control attitude is not as obvious as it is for an ESTJ 8 or an ESTJ 3. Because this person will maintain control in a more subtle way. They will maintain control by making sure that things are being done properly, that things are fair, that things are correct. And they will place a very, very, very high level importance on all of these things related to being correct, being fair, being well done, and so on and so forth. Now, moving on to the next one, ESTJ Enneagram 8. Another very common pairing. In this case, we have an individual that will be a more stereotypical version of the ESTJ. You know, we have a lot of stereotypes in the community, people saying that ESTJs are domineering and controlling, and so on and so forth. And of course, this is not always true. There's a lot of ESTJs who are not mean, rude, and dominating in a mean way or in a way that really harms other people. That also has to do a lot with someone's level of self-development, growth, and understanding. However, if we look at the raw archetype of the ESTJ 8, we will notice someone who's very comfortable with the process of externalizing their thoughts. Someone who is very comfortable with taking on leadership or managerial positions and kind of being the person that moves things forward. We have the hero TE, we have the Enneagram 8 the challenger type, and we also have the interaction style of the ESTJ, which is a control type or an in-charge type. These people will often end up in managerial positions. They will often end up as CEOs, general managers, business owners, and so on, because sometimes they seem to be the best suited for roles where they have to take on a lot of risk. But risk not necessarily in terms of, improvising and trying out new strategy, but risk in terms of dealing with a lot of pressure, dealing with a lot of people issues that would cause others to feel very stressed and overwhelmed. They will use their extroverted thinking to direct, to help people understand what exactly it is that they need to do, what are the objectives, what do we do concretely in order to move forward. They will be quite directional, quite direct at the same time. So directional in terms of indicating to people what needs to be done, what direction we need to focus on, but at the same time direct in the sense that they will tell you what they think. An ESTJ1 might do that as well, but I find them to be a little bit more reclusive as compared to the ESTJ8. Now, moving on to the other two types of ESTJ that we often find, namely 3 and 6. The ESTJ3 will somewhat resemble an ESTP or an ENTJ more, or might mistype themselves as ESTP or ENTJ because of the charming nature of Enneagram 3. While Enneagram 1 and 8 tend to be more direct, a bit more brutal, to the point, Enneagram 3 tends to be a little bit more charming, a little bit more improvisational in a way. I don't want to highlight this word too much because it depends a lot on the MBTI type as well. But for the ESTJ Enneagram 3, it will be more important to win people over. So they will kind of show this control attitude or control interaction style that they have to win people over and make people follow them. They will also be more sensitive to criticism, especially criticism that is related to their performance and their work, as compared to an 8 or a 1, who might be more open to that direct criticism. The 3 ESTJ will be a little bit more sensitive, a little bit more likely to say, okay, I'm not really comfortable exposing myself to the possibility of receiving criticism because this will hit me quite strongly in my ego. However, I would say that a strength that the Enneagram 3 can bring to the ESTJ is a focus on people that is a bit more warm, more empathetic in a way as compared to ESTJ 1 or 8. I would say that the ESTJ 3 tends to have a bit more ease in dealing with emotional aspects related to other people. And I'm not saying necessarily that this will be their preference because they are still TE hero types. However, they will enjoy charming and winning people over, which in turn will give them a little bit more, let's say, cognitive access to the emotional side of things, or they will understand the importance of that a little bit more than ESTJ 1 and ESTJ 8. And lastly, we have ESTJ 6, another combination that is quite likely, not the most common one, but quite likely. Again, this person will have a similar vibe to ESTJ 1 because they will also sometimes mistype themselves as ISTJs, perhaps even INTJs sometimes, because they will appear to be a little bit more reclusive and reserved as compared to an ESTJ 8 or an ESTJ 3. They will be more dutiful, more compliant, and less likely to show their control interaction style in such an obvious way. Because Enneagram 6 is a compliant type in Enneagram terms, they will look to kind of get the job done to make sure that, all of their responsibilities are handled in the right way, to make sure that the things that they are working on are being handled properly, and that their boss or their coworkers or their families are happy and satisfied with the work that they do. That's why they will also portray a more stable, down-to-earth individual that might not be so, let's say, openly focused on getting power. They will still want you to be in charge, to be in control, but not in such an obvious way like an 8 or a 3 might want to. They might sometimes not take the lead, like in an explicit way, but they will still naturally be good leaders. People who know how to delegate, people who know how to kind of move resources, whether that's financial resources or human resources, from one side to the other in order to achieve fast results. But they will have a little bit more patience when things are not really going their way, and might experience more anxiety compared to the other types of ESTJs that I talked about. And that's because 6 is an anxiety type. It's part of the thinking triad. Okay, so these are my thoughts on some of the most common ESTJ pairings. Now, of course, other combinations are also possible, but not as likely. Especially ESTJ 9, ESTJ 2, ESTJ 4, I would say are quite unlikely. I don't really know anyone in any of these groups. At the same time, an ESTJ 5 or an ESTJ 7 is, let's say, moderately likely, so somewhat in between. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your perspective on the different combinations between ESTJ and different Enneagram types. So feel free to share your thoughts below. And as always, thanks a lot for being with me. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and see you next time with another video on typology. Thanks a lot, guys.